Hello, internet fans. Do you want to learn about horror movies that you never knew existed? Do you miss the video store but not the late fees? Then join us at 3B Video, where we talk about stuff like this, and this, and this. If you'll excuse me, I've got some videotapes to return. You like Huey Lewis in the news?
We're going to go over this one time and one time only.
Hey everybody, have you heard the news? Joe Bob is back in town. Joe Bob is back in town. Joe Bob is back in town.
Welcome back, video creeps. What up, you guys?
What up? Welcome to my channel, Video Creep. Make sure you hit subscribe.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Snobs Interviews. I am Mick Manhattan, the Scene Snob, and I'm here with an all-new interview with, I'm recording this after my interview with her. She's absolutely fantastic, and we have such a great conversation about television shows that we enjoy growing up, and so much more. And we talk about her new movie, Concrete Cowboy, which stars her, Liz Priestley, who is amazing, and I can't wait for you guys to meet her. And Idris Elba, Caleb McLaughlin from Stranger Things, Method Man's in it. There's so many people in it. So please enjoy our interview. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts if you can. That would be fantastic. And I am at the Scene Snob on all social media, so please follow us for more updates on everything. Thank you so much. And here's my interview with Liz Priestley. Thank you. There you go.
Yeah.
But if it was one show, I don't think I would need that much.
That's a lot of shows. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you do this like full time? Like this is you are a podcaster. That is awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I've turned it into a channel.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah. So like for me, I love doing the interviews. So I focus on that, and I have another show I focus on. But everybody else, it's just other hosts, and I produce them and program the shows. So,
awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I've been wanting to start a podcast for like my friend and I have been talking about it for a year now, and it's nowhere near as cool as what everyone I've met now in the last like 4 months does. So now I'm like, I don't know if I should do it because now I'm embarrassed because like what you guys do is so cool. But I have this idea, I have this concept of something that I want to do, and I think, I mean, it's entertainment. It's definitely it's critiquing a show, which I know is the popular thing to do now because everybody and their mom starts a podcast by critiquing a show. But it's and I won't say what show it is, but it's I in particularly want to talk about it from the point of view of a woman of color, looking at it through the lens of today with everything that's going on with people of color, because this show is particularly known for not featuring people of color on it.
Oh, okay.
Even though it took place in an urban environment.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. You should roll with it.
I want to. I really do. I think it's, I think it's fascinating that this show, I really want to say it, but, that it became such a kind of cultural thing because people love the show, but that it took place in an urban environment and featured just all white characters. And I think it's fascinating. And in particular, so that's part of the spin. And then in particular, I started watching the show when I was like in college. I know this is not what you brought me on here to talk about, but
No, I love it.
I started watching the show in college, and I've been watching it ever since. And the girl I want to do the show with, another woman of color, has never seen it. So that's the other twist, is that I have seen every episode and she has never seen it, and I won't allow her to see it unless we do this podcast. So she's been like, I really want to watch it, Liz. Are we gonna do this? And I'm like, no, not yet. Don't watch it yet.
Absolutely. That would be great if you did it where, every episode is an episode. So she watches it and then you discuss it. That's a great idea.
Yeah, and we have like we sat down and planned it out. We have like our little intro and outro, and each episode, like we have like our standard kind of segments. And like I really want to do this, but then I'm totally now intimidated because I've met like 30 of you guys, and I'm just like,
do not be intimidated. You got to start somewhere. I started podcasting almost 10 years ago, so it was new, and I was on other people's podcasts, so just hosting that way. But the Scene Snobs I started a year ago with just one show and just me. And it grew from there into all of these different shows with these different hosts and stuff. And it's because I was like, I don't want just my voice. I want as many walks of life on the channel as possible.
Yeah.
And different opinions and stuff. Because I think that's what's interesting. I want to give people.
Think that is amazing. Like I said, you guys, I'm like super impressed with the podcasting world. I'm very new to it. I listen to several, but kind of on and off. I try to be consistent. Like there was one I was listening to, like help me go to sleep at night, and it was lovely. But then I started like going to sleep at night, so I stopped listening to it, But like there's like a duo. I'm into the critiquing shows. I told you. There's one I listen to, it's a duo, and they listen to episodes of Frasier, which is like one of my favorite shows of all time. I know this is so controversial. I'm not a super huge fan of Cheers, but I love Frasier, which is like the opposite of what you're supposed to do.
But that show was so different from Cheers, even though
so different. And I loved it. Why I loved that it was so different is because it, those characters become so beloved. But that show really does paint Frasier Crane in like the least flattering light, and I love it because he's such a snob, and I was watching this thing and it really broke it down. It was like, in 14 seasons he sees his son like 9 times or something like that, and the show happens in real time because the kid ages, so it's like he's never shown like fighting for custody of Frederick, right? It's like, he only sees him 9 times in 14 years. There's like stuff like that. But no, I absolutely, I love that show. And I love that, that David Hyde Pierce, this guy that they literally pulled because he looked like Kelsey Grammer, and they just built this whole show around that. I love it. And I love the dad, like, I tried to like Cheers. I did. I've watched many episodes, but I don't get the same laughter feeling as when I'm watching Frasier. I just love that show.
Cheers, I do enjoy Cheers, but I agree. It's one of those shows that I think like is a product of its time.
Yeah.
Where Frasier kind of broadened it, and I think that was because like in the '90s there was this swing of sitcoms where they were trying to, I guess, appeal to more younger people, younger audiences.
Yeah,
You know,
I would say so.
and
Yeah, Cheers definitely seems to have made for like an older crowd
mhm.
or like a more mature crowd, whereas like Frasier and his brother are mature, but the show itself is
Yeah.
us laughing at that because of the fact that they are such snobs in
Oh
a
yeah.
world where people are just like, we are not that serious about the French restaurant or the wine or the sherry club. You know what I mean? And so
Oh,
like,
yeah,
yeah, I
absolutely.
absolutely agree. I think, Gen X kind of rewrote the book in terms of television. And I
But
love that. I do. I think Gen X gets a lot of crap. I'm not of that generation, but I think they get a lot of crap in a lot of ways. But I do like how they changed television. I do.
Absolutely.
Not reality TV, but maybe did you ever notice how like after 9/11 all the kind of NBC comedies suddenly shifted to single cam,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it became this sort of voyeuristic look into the world of everyday people, as opposed to groups of cool fabulous people hanging out in New York, which was like the entire NBC lineup. So I kind of love that. I love that because that's where you got, like The Office and 30 Rock and Parks and Rec and all those shows that really just changed kind of the landscape and gave us the coolest.
They smartened up in such a crazy way that really worked on so many levels. Like you said, with all the snobby groups hanging out, because even Friends is like a bunch of snobby, sort of rich people.
I absolutely hate Friends. I absolutely hate that show. I really do. Because this is what I said to my daughter. I said one day, look, I want you to watch a show. I said, because my daughter, she's 13 going on like 45. She's one of the coolest kids in the world. And we have a very similar like personality and very similar taste in shows and movies and stuff. So I said, I'm going to introduce you to a new show. Here's what it's about. 6 friends in New York living in the same apartment building, hanging out, learning to laugh, love, and live life in the big city. And she said, oh, Friends. I said, no, Living Single.
Oh my God, such a better show too.
And it came out the year before. And this is true. This is all true. It's all in print. Came out the year before. And the producers and writers from Friends were like, hey, cool concept. Let's put some white people in it. Stole the concept and came out with Friends. And Friends became the bigger hit, but it was a total ripoff of a better show. And then my daughter started watching Living Single, and she said the same thing you did. She was like, this is such a better show.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
It's funny you mention that because I just saw Eric Alexander on something not too long ago, and I'm like, oh my God. And I call her Max because of Living Single.
And that woman has not aged. My boyfriend and I were just talking about that like yesterday. We saw her on something too. And he was like, that woman looks exactly the same. I was like, I know.
Yeah. And
she's amazing. And she recently took David Schwimmer to task, I think, on Twitter or Instagram or something.
Did she?
Said, he said something like, Friends broke the mold about such and such and such. And she was like, no, no, actually, our show did. And they had a little back and forth because he didn't realize that was it. And then he ended up backtracking later. It was like, oh, I was wrong. I'm sorry.
Even like Kim Fields showing up, she showed up on somebody's podcast recently. Somebody like I'm kind of, I don't know perfectly well, but we worked together a little bit, and I was just like, oh my God. I immediately go to Facts of Life. It's my first where I go with that. Right? But then she found stardom in going into Living Single.
I love her so much. Regine was like my favorite. Like all her wigs and then like when she would get mad and snatch off her wig, like Regine. I'm gonna watch Living Single after this. I really am. Like now I'm like, nope, the rest of the day, that's it.
It is crazy to me how many shows that were so popular. Again, like when it came to the 90s, like Friends was a phenomenon. And I remember how many people were into Friends, and I was just kind of like, okay. Like I can never watch an episode again. And it's not like I was ever like appealed to make sure I watch it, but I wasn't a diehard fan or anything.
No,
but
either. I
like,
never was.
I try to like I may put on like an episode or something, but it's not like if you watch The Office. Like you can rewatch The Office over and over again. But like I've watched an episode of Friends and I'm like, these are whiny human beings.
They're actually terrible friends. Like they're actually terrible. They are not people I would ever want to be friends with because they're super like manipulative and dim and selfish, and the whole show is built around that we're terrible people, but you should like us.
Yeah.
Why? And it's different. Like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is also built around the concept of we are terrible people, but you should like us, and they do it in a completely different much more fantastic way.
And it worked.
Ever did.
It works on so, but it's because it's so in your face. Like we don't think we're terrible people, but we are always doing terrible things.
Exactly.
Friends is I don't think we're terrible.
I think part of it is that they know that they're terrible people and they just don't care. Like Dennis, for example, like the sociopathic friend probably doesn't know that he's a terrible person, but probably wouldn't care if he did. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what I love. Like the characters on Friends, I feel like spend so much, the writing is such that they make you want to root for them.
Yeah.
In situations that, like in real life, if you had a friend like that, you'd be like, what the hell are you doing? Like, stop doing that. And again, this is not the series I was talking about, but that's another series taking place in an urban environment. Very, very few people of color for a series that takes place in a big city.
And when they would have people of color come on the show, it was almost like they made it an event.
Yeah,
like,
it was always a thing.
Yeah, like
a thing. And then the show that I'm wanting to review, same thing.
Yeah.
Whenever a person of color was there, it was
it was like, look at us, look at what we're doing, and it's like, okay.
And it was always, problematic. Because they always played into the black stereotypes, even though they were like, look at us. And I'm like, but you haven't made this character different than anything we've seen. You know what I mean? So it was always just like, it's still problematic what you're doing.
Oh, 100%.
I'm not a fan of.
No. And I totally agree. Like, the only thing I would say in the 90s that kind of stuck out, and it was only because it was sort of like in It's Always Sunny beforehand, was like Seinfeld. They were terrible people that didn't see it.
Yeah.
And they had some problematic things on that show. I cannot defend it.
And, Seinfeld is one of those, I used to watch it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've gotten older, I watch it much, 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 much less.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just because it hasn't aged well or it's because I've seen it so much. I don't know. I'm not usually like that. I can watch something over and over and over and over again. But Seinfeld is one of those ones I'm finding it's like, oh, Seinfeld's done. You know what I mean? Like I don't watch it as much now. Whereas like one of the other shows my boyfriend makes fun of. My boyfriend's also an actor, so we always have these conversations at home as well. And he makes fun of me on the daily because I am always watching the Golden Girls. And he's just like, why? And again, that's a show very few people of color But somehow that show ages quite well.
Yeah.
It was quite progressive for a show set in the 80s about a set of geriatric women. Like, it should not age as well as it does. Like, there's an episode, it's like Mario Lopez's first ever acting gig, and he's playing a kid who is about to be deported because he's an illegal alien.
Oh, wow.
And he's a student of Dorothy, and she's trying to fight for him to stay in the country. This is 1986.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's you know what I mean? And like, one of the characters has a brother who comes out to her as homosexual, and she has to like decide, and am I okay with that? And it's treated in such a way where, like, you know, he gives this beautiful speech about, like, you know, I'm not ashamed of who I am, and like, this is the man I love. Like, and it's beautiful. And I'm like, this is 1987. Like, it's crazy how progressive that show was, and how it still holds up. It's weird because the formula, it shouldn't work. You know what I mean? Like, four old ladies. What?
I mean,
it totally works.
I always felt like I'm sorry if I interrupted you. I always felt like shows that were run predominantly by comedians, women, and for Jewish men and people of color, like, you're going to get more poignant writing because
that's so true.
So I mean,
look at the stats. You have that with the Golden Girls. You have that with all of those like NBC single cam shows that we talked about. You have that with everything Norman Lear ever wrote.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
and
everything Tina Fey has ever touched.
But even like Norman Lear, I discovered this when they did the live shows of because I love Good Times. I love the Jeffersons.
Me too.
Yeah, I didn't love All in the Family, which they all pretty much started from. Everything stemmed from. But one I really loved was Maude.
Yeah.
And that was because B. Arthur.
Way ahead of her time.
Yeah, and if you go back and look at that, like, it stems, and Jeffersons and Directly and Maude are spinoffs from All in the Family.
All in the Family, yeah.
And they took it to a completely different turn. Like,
yeah, I love, All in the Family is tough to watch.
Yeah.
In terms of, the things that Archie says, but again, that was a thing that was way ahead of its time as well. But the thing that that will always endear Norman Lear to me, besides the fact that he created all these hits, is, do you know why he created Good Times? Good Times. No, the Jeffersons. Sorry, the Jeffersons.
No, why?
Because so he had come out with All in the Family. He had spun off Maude, and he had come out with Good Times, and they were all hits. But there was a very loud, very vocal section of the Black community that did not like Good Times and felt it was wrong for a white guy and white audiences to make money off of another show about a Black family struggling. And what happened, part of those voices came from the Black Panther Party. And one day, two members, I think it was two, maybe three, at least two members of the Black Panther Party showed up in Norman Lear's office with guns, took him hostage in his office with guns. And he didn't freak out. This is why Norman Lear is so cool. He didn't freak out. He said, "What do you want? What can I do? How can I help? Talk to me. What do you want?" They sat down and had a conversation. They said, "We are so sick of seeing our people up there struggling. You want to help us? Write us a show that shows us making it." And he sat down and wrote The Jeffersons.
Oh, that's awesome. I never knew that.
That's why he took that character that was supposed to be a one-off Good Times character who was there specifically to irritate Archie Bunker. took that character and said, okay, I will make him a successful Black man with a family, moving on up, right? So he wrote the Jeffersons for Black people to give us a family to look at that wasn't struggling, that was not good times. I will always love Norman Lear for that. I think that is the coolest thing.
One of the best stories I heard Marla Gibbs tell was after the first reading, when she was coming in to play on the show, she sat with the writers afterwards and was like, this isn't how Black people talk. And instead of where a lot of white writers in a white writer's room in the 70s would say, get out of here, they added her and, incorporated her into the writing circle. And so we want to learn.
So cool to me. Like, that makes him even cooler to me. Like I just love him for that. That they could sit down and voice their concerns. Say this isn't how people talk. This isn't how our people talk, and say, okay, yeah, tell us, so we can get it right. Or to have people say, listen, that character that you have on Good Times, he's cooning. We don't like that. Show us something respectable. Sure, okay. How about this? You know what I mean? Like, he had the opportunity to say, get out of here. Like, these are cash money makers. I can do it. You know what I mean? Like, I can do what I want. And he didn't do that. And I love him for that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why it worked. Even with All in the Family, I mean, I know it's, when you look back at it from today's lens, you're sitting there saying it's a very racist show. But if you really think about Archie Bunker, he was always the antagonist in every episode. And he always learned his lesson about what was going on by the end of the episode to change going forward. And he did, through progressively throughout the show, he actually did change his views on a lot of things.
Yeah, he did.
If you think about it,
I think that show too gave a lot of opportunity, not just to voice Archie's view, but you heard Michael's view. You heard I can't think Gloria's view about like what was going on socially and politically with young people, which other shows at that time, they didn't have characters doing that. You know what I mean? So like, yes, the stuff out of Archie's mouth was, pretty terrible, but it set up the opportunity for the opposite view to be voiced as well in a way that people hadn't really gotten a chance to do on TV. And like, and sometimes I hear people say like, oh, Edith was such a weak character. And I was like, but she wasn't.
No.
Anybody that stays married to Archie Bunker is not weak. You know what I mean? And she had so many wonderful storylines with her character, some of them very difficult to watch. You know what I mean? But I love her character. She was so representative of like my mom's generation. Of like the, having dinner on the table at a certain time and always wearing the house dress. And I mean, my mom didn't do that, but that was her mom. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I do like All in the Family for what it was. It's hard to watch sometimes. Yeah. But it also is, that's part of the humor, is that this is a character who could say the wildest things that you would never get away with saying on TV now. You know what I mean? Sometimes, I mean, I'll watch it, and sometimes he'll say something I'm like, I shouldn't laugh at that. That's hilarious. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like,
but if you
take a little bad.
If you take something like All in the Family, and like going back to Friends too, because if you go back, there's a lot of problematic language in Friends.
Tons.
But there's no apology for it.
Yeah.
Nobody learned their lesson for that. Whereas like in something like All in the Family, that was in a way very progressive and trying to show from a liberal point of view, but from a very conservative household. Yeah. Every time Archie said something or did something, it blew up in his face. So you knew he was wrong. Like even he, as an actor, to accept that and be like, I'm gonna take on being the bad guy. But it's got to blow up in my face or this doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, there was always someone or something to bounce that back in his face and be like, all right, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
we're not in that world anymore. Do you know what I mean? And that's part of why where the humor came from, is like when he would say something and then George Jefferson would walk immediately through the door right after hurling some kind of, that's where the humor would come from. You know what I mean? And on Friends, there was no character or situation to bounce that back. They would just say stuff.
They were in that
out there
echo chamber bubble. And even if they said something, whether it be about homosexuality, people of color, whatever it was at the time, which was in the 90s, let's say it's taboo to talk about.
Yeah.
On white television, for lack of a better term. Must-see TV, which is the same thing that gave us the Cosby Show, and they gave us, A Different World, and so many other. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is,
exactly.
So, to put Friends in the forefront like that. And I mean, once you have a runaway show and a hit, you kind of, you're just trying to latch on where you can.
Look at the Big Bang Theory. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right?
It goes on forever. But yeah, I mean, those kinds of jokes on Friends were always played for laughs.
Yeah.
As opposed to where, like, on All in the Family, I felt like the joke, the name calling or the insult was not the joke.
Yeah.
The blowing up in the face was the joke.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like, the insult was thrown and then it always came back to hit him. That's what the joke was.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas on Friends, the insult was the joke, which then made us the butt of the joke.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that to me is not funny.
But you were, and I, as a white boy at the time, I was young when these shows were coming out. Like,
yeah, me too. Yeah,
they were, Friends. I didn't know what it was to be like a 20-year-old, and I wasn't really looking up to them.
Yeah.
But I was looking up to Will Smith.
Yeah.
Like he was. My generation.
Yeah.
And the stories that they were telling there, like Uncle Phil, I wanted to be my dad. He was,
too. I mean, come on.
He was the best.
He was tough when he needed to be, but he also was loving when he needed to be. He was supportive. I loved Uncle Phil. What a great character.
In my opinion, he's the best. He's the best father character in TV history.
I love Uncle Phil. It's funny. I used to say that about Cliff Huxtable.
I did too.
Part of me wants to still, but it is so hard. And I am an actor and I fight people doing this, but it is so hard for me to separate the character from the actor. And I don't mind that, like, my daughter still watches the show. I don't mind that because she's able to separate. I can't do it. I've tried to watch the show since, and I just get so, like, filled with rage. So I just can't do it. But I used to say that about Cliff Huxtable, and there's a part of me that still would. But what I loved about that character was, again, he was stern when he needed to be, but he always did it in a way that you always knew, okay, my dad still loves me. Like, Uncle Phil could be scary in a way where you'd be like, oh crap. You know what I mean? Like, and I loved that because that was James Avery and he was hilarious at that. But I loved Cliff Huxtable because even when he was being tough, I mean, I brought you into this world and I'll take you out. Like, that shit is hilarious. Pardon my language. Like, that is hilarious. You know what I mean? Like,
that whole sequence too. And Theo's whole monologue.
Like, it's perfection. And it's so hard to, like.
But do you remember that pilot episode after Theo's monologue? The audience was clapping. They were with him.
Going nuts.
And I think you could feel the collective in the audience when he stands up. He's like, Theo, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
And everyone just bucks. I mean, look at me. I'm still laughing. I can't. I mean, it's such brilliant material. God, it's heartbreaking.
In such a way, like, yeah, it is, because, like, I mean, growing up in the 80s, I wanted to be a Huxtable.
Yeah.
They were always having a fun time. They were always fun kids.
They used to dance down the stairs.
Right?
For God's sakes, like that. Look, they were having fun with life, like in a way that somehow seemed totally realistic.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how they got the perfect casting on that show, from the mom on down to the kids. Everybody was perfectly cast on that show. Somehow they looked nothing alike, and yet you totally bought them as a real fan. I loved that show. I remember watching that last episode in 1992, like in my parents' bedroom. I remember that when it went off the air, because that was an event. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
God, it's heartbreaking.
That doorbell finally starting to work. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, it's
Danced off I remember them dancing off the set.
everything, and it still kind of gives me goosebumps, because it was it's such a great show.
It's iconic, and same situation with that show and Fresh Prince. These were shows that did not show us struggling. These were shows that showed a comfortable family in a comfortable life, just living there every day.
Yeah.
I'm adopted. I grew up in the suburbs. My parents are white, but my parents had good jobs. I didn't grow up in a household where we did struggle. So in some ways, watching those kind of shows and movies, for me, I always felt somewhat removed, because I was like, well, that was not my experience. And I felt guilty about that, because I'd be like, well, that wasn't my experience. And so I must not be, I must not be black or whatever. And then you started to see these other shows where it showed us in those kinds of lifestyles where we were comfortable. And that's not exactly my situation, because my parents are not black, but it also did reflect certain things that were in my life. Like in Fresh Prince, I went to a private school. You know what I mean? I got teased in a way that, like, Carlton and Ashley used to get teased. Like, those kinds of episodes to me rang true. And so, and I loved all that. And I loved the humor in it, because I'll be like, yeah, I've heard that before. You know what I mean? Like, that's
Yeah.
So I appreciated seeing those kinds of shows growing up. And of course I watched them, Sister, like, oh man, I was like into all of those. You know what I mean? Like, and for a while that was not popular. And then in the 90s, you started seeing people in these comfortable, like Family Matters, and like comfortable kind of middle class lives. And I was like, well, that's a little more like what I'm familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked it. I don't know. I still love them. I still love those shows. I really do.
Yeah, and those are the
I
ones.
can talk about this with you all day. Like, this is so up my alley. You have no idea. Like, this is like what I do.
This is why you should do your show. I'm telling you, you should do your show. Please do it, because this is great. This is great, and do it with honesty and be unapologetic. That's any advice I can give you as a podcaster. Just do it that way and have fun with it. Always have fun with it.
Yeah, I think it would be really fun, because despite the flaws, somehow I still love the show. And I go into it being like, this is problematic. And I'm still like, I still want to know what happens. Like, I love the show. I mean, it's not on anymore. But I still love it. I still go back to certain episodes when I'm in a mood, and I'm like, oh, so and so used to do this. Let me go find that episode, And there's a lot to love about the show, because I think it's part fantasy, part reality. And I think the fantasy elements are what people grabbed onto about it. And so there is some of it to love. Then there's some things that bear discussing. The fact that there are no black people in this show, and why not? Because why not? Like, I don't understand. Even like the extras. There's like no black extra. It's very strange how somehow a show that takes place in a major urban environment erased all the black people. I don't understand. And like I said, yeah, when black people do appear, the few times that we do appear, it is way problematic in a way that has very much not aged well.
It's so crazy to me that, and I don't even know what show you're talking about. That's why I want you to do your podcast the most, because I want to find out.
I know. I'm not going to say it.
You better send it to me as soon as you do the first episode, because I want to listen to it. But I grew up in Jersey City, New Jersey. Now, I'm not sure, and so like for me, I grew up I had predominantly Puerto Rican, Black, and Filipino neighbors, kids I played with. Like there wasn't a lot of white kids around, and it was my brothers and my sister and I. So you didn't think anything different.
Yeah.
Because you just weren't in the environment to think differently. I think as I grew older and I see like, okay, yes, you can go out of an urban environment and find a lot more racism. And not understanding it because it's like, well, nobody told me I'm not allowed to play with anybody of a different color or that they were different, because it was just go play. Yeah. And have a good time.
Because I do remember growing up where I was told I couldn't play with people because.
And I think, for me, like I've always gravitated towards shows that were more of an urban setting and had more people of color, because that's what I was kind of ingratiated in and growing up in, urban environments. So for me, it was like, I get this.
I know for me, I was like, I just want to see people who look like me on TV. Yeah. Why are there no people where are the people who look like me? You know what I mean? And then there were people who looked like me, but they were much, much lighter than me. And that's a whole controversy that doesn't get talked about yet, because we're still, the bigger controversy is just us as a whole. You know what I mean? Like you know what I mean? But like I loved A Different World, but not as much as The Cosby Show, because for me on The Cosby Show, there were more people who were darker skinned, looked like me. And on A Different World, it was suddenly, there were black women, but they were very light skinned black women. And like there was an episode on the show about there's a dark skinned character who's kind of a supporting character, and she has kind of a confrontation with one of these lighter skinned girls about the fact that she's darker skinned and how she's viewed as less attractive. That was an actual episode on A Different World, and I just was like, I don't know if I mean, I'm glad you're having the conversation, but I don't know if I love this, that, even after that episode aired, you still have mostly lighter skinned black women on here. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I just wanted to see people who looked like me.
Well, that was, I can't understand that. That's the sad part. Like, I cannot understand that, because there's hundreds of shows growing up where people did look like me, but I was watching What's Happening. I was watching 227. I loved 227.
Oh my God.
Dwayne Wayne was the man. Like Dwayne Wayne,
Wayne was the man.
He was so cool.
Are you kidding me? He was way ahead of his time.
Every time I see Kadeem Howardson show up anywhere.
Yeah, no. Then that third season episode, and the first episode where Whitley sees him on the plane, and he's like in a suit, and he lost the flip up glasses. He got the earring. I was like, Dwayne Wayne. Okay.
But
and then he kissed her at the end. I was like,
see, that's where I was like so young. I'm like, all right, this is getting to a point where I'm like, I was having fun when he and Ron were running around causing hijinks. Like Theo on Cosby Show, like when he and Cockroach were running around, like I got it. I understood.
I loved when he and Ron were just up to no good, up to stupid schemes and stuff. I loved all the, and I loved the Lisa Bonet episodes, and I wish they had kept Marissa Tomei on there for more than a season. I liked her character. I don't know why they got rid of her. I thought she was so interesting, and I thought it was cool that they had the perspective of a white girl going to a predominantly black or a historically black college. I was like, that's interesting. And then they got rid of her. I was like, oh.
When they got rid of her, I will say from personal, because I've always wanted to go to Hillman College.
Yeah.
I was like, it looks like fun. I want to go. And then when she was gone, I was like, I know it's a predominantly black college, but can I not go?
I know. Now you're like, well, Maggie's not there.
I was like, I'm not sure if I can go or not. But that's to go back to black shows. They were teaching lessons that still hold out through time. Whereas with white shows,
totally.
I can't think. I mean, yeah, maybe there's child abuse in some episode, a very special episode, covering this or
very special. Yeah.
It's anorexia, and I'm like, I don't have anorexia. I don't understand what's happening here. I'm not saying that's not a sad thing or people don't deserve help, but
like the things these are not kind of like the everyday struggles of every person, right? Or like a whole group of people. You know what I mean? Like we live racism every single day. It just kind of is.
I still credit Fresh Prince for teaching me about police brutality, even without brutality in it. But if I'm sure you remember the episode where they get thrown in jail, and at the end,
and that that all came from Will Smith. Credit to Will Smith, because you know what? At that time that he was given that show, he had no real acting experience, and as an actor myself, I look back on some of those episodes, and then like in the early seasons, he's like mouthing along with other people's lines. Like, you can kind of see him grow as an actor through the seasons. And I kind of love that. But he also contributed so many storylines from his own life and stuff that he rapped about and stuff that he talked about. And I credit him for for being fearless enough to kind of bring those issues out there and say, well, this is something this is what we lived through where I'm from. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people didn't know about what we went through until people like Will Smith put it out there and said, well, this is what it's like this is what it was like for me growing up in Philly. So to do that when you're a young kind of rap superstar, and I mean, I know he had like financial struggles and whatnot at the time, and I think there was like a controversy around how he got the show started, but to take that opportunity and to be able to use that and put real issues out there as an everyday type of thing, I think that's really brave. I think that's really cool. That's one of the reasons I like Will Smith. He gets a lot of crap too, for being kind of a safe rapper or whatever. I'm like, he pushed some boundaries. You know what I mean? Like he pushed some boundaries in his own way, and I respect him for that. I like him.
And he, even with that, like that episode, the way it all transpired with Uncle Phil being a lawyer and Carlton not understanding because he's never experienced anything like this before, and it's Will telling him, like, Will is playing the anger behind it of like, this happens all the time and you're not seeing it. And then Uncle Phil having to play the heartbroken dad saying, yeah, I know I've shielded you from it, but it does. I mean, it's very real.
Yeah. I for that particular episode and that particular moment, I also really credit Alfonso Ribeiro's performance, because he had to be kind of the representation of the white audience for that. Because it's not a white character in that scene, but he's presenting the white perspective of, I don't understand. That's really hard for a black man to do. You know what I mean?
And to his credit too, he did another episode where, remember, they were pledging the black fraternity. and he did everything. Will and he did everything they needed to do, and at the end, they didn't want to let him in because he was quote unquote too white. And his speech in that, again, representing not the white audience, but representing the black audience, saying to white people, like, you know, don't call me. I'm black.
Yeah.
Whether I'm your idea of black or not, I'm black.
That's one of my top 5, maybe top 3 episodes, because that's something I've heard my entire life. And so that particular speech to me rang true because my whole life I've heard, you're too white.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that is so, like, that is so hurtful, y'all. Like, because listen, the white people are not claiming me.
Mm-hmm.
And for you to not claim me either means I don't belong anywhere. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that is so hurtful for your own people to be like, well, we don't claim you. You know, and for there to be some kind of unspoken code that you can't be considered black enough if you don't speak a certain way, or if you don't dress a certain way, or if you don't live your life a certain way.
Yeah.
To me, it's just so absolutely ridiculous. I'm like, we're facing enough problems as it is, as a whole. Can we all kind of just stick together? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's a great point.
We're already facing enough opposition elsewhere. Like, we don't need to have the infighting. But that's, you know, that's been around forever too. And that I'm sad to say, but I'll be honest, that's probably, I've experienced more of that than I have outright racism from people who are not of my own race.
Wow. I mean, it's you know, I recently, with everything going on, I, you know, reached out to black friends and said, like, listen, I don't think I understand systemic racism. I don't think and throughout this year, I've been trying to learn more and more. Like, do I consider myself a racist? No. But is it quite possible that, you know, I've said things in the past and that I don't realize are racist? I was like, yeah, absolutely. Everybody has to internalize and kind of look at themselves. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I've reached out to friends and I'm like, listen, I don't know if I've ever said it. You know, I don't, but you have mentioned in topics that you were talking about that you've had white friends say, oh, no, he's okay. He's one of us, or he's a white guy. I was like, I don't know if I've ever said that. I don't remember it. It's not one of those things that sticks out to me, but it obviously sticks out to you. And if I have, I want to apologize now. I will do my best not to do it ever again. But the only promise I can make to any of my friends who are people of color, and that's not just black, that's everybody, is the best thing I can promise is I'll try and make sure that my kids are better and never do that.
Yeah.
And
that, well, you know, that in and of itself, it means a lot, like, to a person of color, because I think maybe one time in my life I've ever had, excuse me, a white friend of mine ever apologize for potentially saying anything hurtful. I think that speaks a lot to your character, that you even
I appreciate that.
would have the presence of mind to be like, could I have possibly done something like that in my past, and what can I do to make it right? So many people don't even have the presence of mind to be like, oh, could I have been part of the problem? So I think that speaks a lot to your character. That's deep. I love that.
I appreciate that. And I think it comes from cancel culture. And it's not an idea of I don't want to be canceled. It's an idea of I try to look at cancel culture from a different perspective. Either people are getting mad about it or people are all about it. And I'm looking at it from, what have I done that I could be canceled for? Mm-hmm. Like, what have I done in my past? And if I've done something, shouldn't it be something, if I'm a good person, shouldn't it be something that I either apologize for, try to change, whatever?
Right. And people, well, you know, apologizing means you might have done something wrong. People don't want to think that they did anything wrong.
Yeah.
Like, well, I'm not a racist. Well, I'm not saying you are, but I'm saying you may have, you know, contributed to the problem if you said something like, you know, and then they go, well, that's not racist. Well, okay, if we can't agree, on what offends me, then I don't know how to
Yeah.
have this conversation with you. And
Yeah.
I have religious conservative people in my family, and that's fine. But when it comes to that kind of conversation of like, systemic racism, I mean, I've been told to my face, I don't believe that there is a systemic racism problem in the United States. And I'm like, well, then I don't know how to have this conversation with you. I'm not one, I don't like to argue. I don't like to be confrontational. I'm not going to sit there for hours and explain to you why you're wrong and why I'm right and why you're foolish or whatever. I'll be sad over here, going,
Yeah.
I don't even, you've blown my mind by saying a statement like that you don't believe that's even a thing. I just simply won't have the conversation with you because that stuns me. You know what I mean?
And it's sad that it can't be that way. It's sad that we can't have conversations because of ignorance, and in a way. And for me, that's what I want to try to ignore. Especially ever since I've always tried to be a good person, and again, it's not. I don't have racist thoughts. It isn't like that, at least that I recognize. But listen, I've heard people say, even in jest, racist things of all colors.
Yeah.
So it exists.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the other thing. People want to act like it's only one-sided.
Yeah, and
That's
it's
controversial too.
And
It's
that's
not one-sided. That's a controversial thing to say. It's not one-sided, but it's not.
and I've always tried to take things like that and say, okay, what have I done and what can I do better? And if friends are hurting and they're saying like I'm hurting, I can put up the hashtag Black Lives Matter as much as possible. But if I'm not changing, I have to change my ways too. I can't just put up a hashtag and say I am part of the movement. I'm not. I need to do things. I need to be active, and so I'm trying to every day. I'm just trying to learn. I guess is what it comes down to on all fronts.
I respect that. I really do. That really does speak to your character. That you're even you're willing to learn. You're doing the thing. You're walking the walk. Because so many people do leave it at a hashtag. You know what I mean? And that's not as helpful as people trying to learn. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I respect that. If we were in person right now, I'd give you a super high five, but I have to.
Yeah, so with pandemic, we'll have to do a virtual high five. Absolutely.
Man, that's awesome. That's really awesome.
Thank you. We're going on an hour, and I have.
I know, but I haven't even talked about this movie. I'm so sorry.
No, it's my fault. It's my fault.
Concrete Cowboy on Netflix. There.
Oh, is it on Netflix? I have to ask you first of all. I never knew that urban horseback riding was a thing. For me, it was always like in the park, the police on the horses. Yeah. I never knew it was a thing. And again, we talked about it. I grew up in Jersey City. I'm like, if this is a thing, it had to have existed for a long time.
I will tell you what, you're right that it has existed for a long time. And I also never knew about it. And I'm from here.
Yeah, you are from Philadelphia. So, and you were shot everything in Philly, right?
Philly, yeah. No, Fletcher Street has been around. Fletcher Street Stables, where we shot in North Philadelphia, has been around since the Civil War. And I did not know about it. And they're one of several stables here in Philly that have been here forever. And Philly is just one of many cities that have had these. So here's the thing. This is why, and it's so funny because when we shot this was not part of the conversation yet. I mean, Black Lives Matter, the movement was already kind of underway and everything, but not to this extent. So when we shot this, it was just incredible timing that it's being released now, and all of this is really a part of the everyday conversation. But because this was way before George Floyd and everything else, but the term cowboy is a slave term. It came from us. If you worked in the stables, you were a stable boy. If you worked in the house, you were a house boy. If you worked with the cows, you were a cowboy. And
I never knew that.
at one time, all cowboys were this color. At
Well,
one time.
I have read, I don't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry. I have read that, because I am fascinated with American history to, again, and the West always sticks out to me, that cowboys in the Western sense, were black. They, for predominantly, they were black. Bass Reeves.
Yeah.
What is the Lone Ranger?
That's where it comes from. And, these were, slaves who, either by earning their freedom or after the war or whatever, stuck to that way of life of caring for horses and animals and took on that name. And it wasn't really until Hollywood got a hold of the story and began kind of churning out this cowboy image that then took over and then became sort of the John Wayne, Clint Eastwood image that we all think of. And traveling shows and so forth, that's where that kind of began splitting and that image began taking over. But as far as these neighborhood stables, they were started in urban cities with the goal of giving young men and now young people a place to go to earn a skill. And that still remains. When you go to these stables, you start from the ground up. You have to muck shit. You got to learn how to sweep out the stalls, do the cleaning, all of that before you ever even get on the horse. And then it's caring for the animal, spending time with the animal, nurturing it, form a bond with the animal, all that kind of stuff. But it's almost like, if you want to think of like an after school activity, that's kind of the idea, is like it's a place where we keep our kids off the streets.
Yeah.
And like I said, I live here, and I didn't know when I got cast. When I was at my costume fitting, I said to the costume designer, I was like, "So this is a fantasy story, right?" And she's like, "No." And I was like,
Wow.
"Oh, okay." And I did like a deep dive on the internet, and
Wow.
it's not stuff they teach in schools.
It's so interesting to me too, because as soon as we had talked and then to set up the interview, I went in and I did a deep dive too. I'm like, why did I never know about urban horseback riding? I wish I did. I would have loved to have been a part of it.
And that's the thing I'm hearing from everybody that saw the movie at the festival, that when it previewed and everything. Everybody keeps saying, I never knew. And I'm like, I know, I didn't either. And if nothing else, I hope people, after seeing it, or do exactly what you did. Let me do a little deep dive.
Yeah.
Hang on. You know what I mean? Like, that's, if nothing else, that's what I want people to do.
Well,
I want to do other things too, but
So the movie is Concrete Cowboy. It's coming out on Netflix, like you said, and it stars Idris Elba and Caleb McLaughlin from Stranger Things.
Yep.
I am a big fan of the show. My brain.
Can I tell you something? When I found out I was going to play his mom, I had not watched the show before. And when I found out, I was like, I should maybe see a few episodes, right? So I saw like 3 episodes of the first season. I'm like, all right, cool. And I'm thinking that 11-year-old Caleb McLaughlin's going to be on set. And I show up, and 17-year-old Caleb McLaughlin was on set. And I was like, blew my mind completely. He's so tall. And I'm in heels in my scenes, and he is so tall. I am looking up to him. I'm like, oh, son.
Well, tell us a little bit about your character. In the movie, you are playing Caleb's mom in the movie, which I think his name is Cole in the movie.
Yes, Cole.
And which character? What's your character's name?
I'm laughing because nobody actually knows. They gave me a name, and it's so funny. It's in the script, and then I show up on the set, and I got a trailer, and it's on the trailer door, and nowhere in the script is my name actually mentioned. No one ever called me by name. So I said to the director, I said, "What's my name?" And he started saying it, and then he had to pronounce it like 6 different ways, and we never settled on a pronunciation. So it's either Amal, Amale, Amelie, or Amale. We don't know.
Which do you prefer?
I think I prefer Amale or Amelie. I'm not a fan of Amal or Amale.
Well, we're gonna go. You are the character, so
I
we're
know.
gonna
So
go
I
with
was gonna say Amale was probably her name, but I don't. I have no idea.
See,
It's so
for me,
funny. This is like a 2-day thing. We were asking people. I was like, "Well, what do you think her name is?" And everyone had a different pronunciation, and we never agreed upon what it actually was. But I'm gonna say Amale.
That's a beautiful name, though, and
I think so. It's spelled really beautifully. I like the way it looks. I don't know.
I have to.
Amale.
That is, I like that spelling too. That's
Yeah, so
really
how would
good.
you pronounce that? Amale?
I would probably say Amali.
Okay, all right. We're gonna
Yeah, I mean that's how it comes off to me.
She well, it's interesting when I auditioned for the part, she was written as differently than I ended up playing her in the film. When I auditioned for her, they had like scenes that were very different from the book, in that she was like a drug addict. The scene that I was going to audition with was a scene where she was being like evicted from her apartment. I think there was like a line in there about like she was going to have to go to rehab, and like the script says it looks like she's lived a hard life. That's what it said. And so yeah, I mean, for the audition, I looked terrible. I did a little method acting, and I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, I looked awful. Not that kind of method acting. Oh my god.
No. I didn't think that. Listen, don't go all My Private Idaho.
I stayed up a lot, and I just was like, I was like crying. I looked awful. But in the actual film, then when it got time to shoot it, they had rewritten it. Actually, by the end of the audition process, they had rewritten it, and so it was a little closer to the source material, which is a book called Ghetto Cowboy by G. Neary.
Nice.
But yeah, so she became a nurse who just, she's a single mom. She's working hard. She's doing everything she can. She's raising this 15-year-old kid. And he, when the film opens, like he's just been thrown out of, I think it's like his 3rd school in a year. So he just, she's just at the end of her rope. And she's like, I think, I've done all that I can, all that I can handle. I think you need a male influence in your life, and I'm gonna take you to your father's. But she does it in a very sort of terrible way, in the sense that she just, we're in Detroit, and so she just drives through the night and literally dumps him on his father's doorstep. His father being Idris Elba, but it's particularly sad because he's never known his father in 15 years, and I have not seen my husband in 15 years. So it's a fractured family situation. But the movie itself is really about the father-son dynamic. And his father does happen to be the leader of this group of Black cowboys in the city. So my son thinks he's going to Philly to be in the city and not expecting to be a cowboy in this city. So that's the movie. But yeah, my character, she's got a complicated relationship with Idris and with Caleb. So she's a complicated woman.
Well, but you're holding your own against Idris Elba and Caleb Coughlin. And
I mean, I had to. I had no choice.
It's amazing. It's fantastic, though.
I mean, they went out on a limb to cast me, so I was like, I better do my job. Like,
I love that so much.
yeah, it was cool. I just, I was like, I gotta better not stink in front of Idris Elba. But no, he was so gracious. He is exactly as cool and as sweet and as charming as you think he is. He is absolutely like he is just that awesome. Like I can't say enough good things about him. And
That's amazing.
And then when you're standing up close to him, like he's so blindingly beautiful, it's like it's not fair. Like you kind of look at him and you're like, you are flawless. Like
he is a flawless man. He's so beautiful. It hurts.
I'm just like, so can we make you James Bond already? And this was a year after. I know this was a year after he was voted, sexiest man alive by People Magazine. So I was just like, reigning sexiest man alive, hopefully future James Bonds, and now Cowboy Idris Elba. He's awesome. It was really fun. I had like a day and a half with him, and then I had like 4.5 days with Caleb. Caleb's hilarious. He's hilarious. I don't know where his energy comes from.
I got to meet him. It was a horror convention.
Oh my god.
2015, I think it was. It was a while back, and he was young, but he was still super tall. I'm 6'8", and I was like, man, this kid is going to be huge.
So tall. I'm short. I'm 5'4", so it's like, like, oh. Okay.
And I was just like, how are you going to do season 4? Tell me how you're going to do season 4. You're going to tower over everybody.
Be gigantic right now. Oh yeah, I know. I worry about him being up there. It's so funny. I tried to keep in touch with him, and because I was like, ooh, I'm gonna see if I can get spoilers. Not really, but I only texted him once since the movie though, and it was because I saw him on Lip Sync Battle, and he was doing some song. He ripped his shirt open. I was like, oh, he's a bitch, your mother. Put your clothes back on this minute.
It's so, I mean, it's amazing, and I cannot wait. This movie sounds amazing. I cannot wait to see it.
I think people are really going to be quite impressed with a lot of the elements in it. In particular, the fact that like the cowboys that we worked with play cowboys in our movie, including one of the leading roles is a guy who's never acted before, and he's one of the cowboys, and it's I think it's gonna be, I think people are really gonna enjoy it.
And do you have a date? Have they put a date on when it's gonna come out?
Put a date on it. They are really messing with my mental health because I've been like chomping at the bit for this movie for over a year. Do you understand that until like Netflix announced this, I've had people from my hometown being like, Liz, did you make this up?
No, there's pictures. They can't take that away from you. I see it on IMDb.
I have pictures, and they were like, girl, did you Photoshop those pictures? I was like, oh, no, I did not Photoshop those pictures. They are real. But it's been so long. I'm like, this movie, please come out. I haven't seen it because I really messed all that stuff up. I have not seen it yet.
I have no doubt that it's going to be a success because it sounds like it hits on all cylinders. And I'm so happy for you and that it's going to be coming out. And one thing I would say, I would get very starstruck. I don't know about you, but you worked with Method Man.
Yeah.
Now,
I think you were going to say Method Man.
Top 3 bands of all time.
Wait.
Wu-Tang.
Can I tell you? This is how I met Method Man. Hold on.
Oh, God. I love it.
Yes. My first day. Well, hold on. Let me backtrack. Because, it was my first day. I show up. And by the way, I had not met anybody prior to my first date, which is unusual for a film like this. You would usually have like a chemistry read and to make sure like Idris isn't too tall and Caleb's not too tall, but none of that happened. So my first day was my first day meeting everyone, and plus it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so I've waited the whole day to get there, and then you show up at 3, you show up at like 1, but you don't get in front of a camera until like 4:30, 5 o'clock. So I'm like, I've been waiting all day in a trailer, and I'm just like, and then we finally get there, and they were very nice to me. They gave me a scene where I didn't have to speak; I just had to react to things. And I get there, and of course, the first person I meet is Caleb, and he just rushes at me, Mom, and I'm like, holy crap, And then we're on a horse, and I look over to my right, and like a foot away from me, there's Idris Elba, and he's just smiling at me. And so I look over at him, and the first words out of my mouth are, "Oh, hello, husband." And he goes, "Hello, wife." And I was just like, so then I spent the whole afternoon with them on a horse, just like bantering, and it was so incredible and awesome. And then I get off the horse, and I'm done for the day. It's dark, and I've got people running up to me. Hey, great job, great to meet you. Byron Bowers, who's in this movie, runs up to me. He's like, "Hi, I'm Byron." I'm like, we talk for 2 seconds. And this is after I've changed out of my costume. I'm back in my street clothes. I've got my stuff, and I'm heading to my car, and I'm running into people left and right. Hey, great job. Great to meet you. Hey, when are you back on set? Tomorrow? You coming to, And I'm just like, oh, I can't believe I just met him, and I'm like trying to talk to my mom, like, oh, he's gorgeous, And in the midst of all that, this guy comes up to me. He's like, hey, how'd it go out there? And I was like, oh my God. We talked for 20 minutes. And I'm just like fangirling over Idris Elba for 20 minutes about how gorgeous he is and how white his teeth are and how he called me his wife. And I was just like, I have to do a big scene with him where I have to like hug him and then I get back to my car and I'm putting my seatbelt on. And that's when I'm like, holy shit, that was Method Man. I didn't even recognize, it didn't register. I am so embarrassed. That's all he would know of me is I'm that random girl who ran up to him and fangirled about Idris Elba to him for 20 minutes. I am so embarrassed. And I was like, I know who he is, but I didn't.
Oh, it's perfect. And that's a great story, though. How many people can tell stories like that?
I was like,
and I'll bet you, as epic as Meth is, he is sitting there and he's like, yeah, but Idris Elba, I mean, that's a gorgeous man.
They were hanging out with the Cowboys. We had like a one night where they were shooting around a campfire, and then they're sitting there for an extra 2 hours, him and Idris, freestyle rapping, just like chit-chatting with all the Cowboys. They were 2 peas in a pod, those two. And I was just like, this is the most surreal thing I have ever done.
Oh, I can imagine. To be a fly on the wall for that, to witness that would have been amazing. You got the experience.
Like, I have cell phones on set, and I was like, God, why? Because like all I just wanted to do was just like, I just need like 10 seconds of this, Like, it was,
nobody will believe it.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was, yeah,
that's fantastic.
Like,
and now
jobs have to like stand there and fan out over Idris Elba. Who does these? Who does this?
Well, I love it, and it makes like just knowing that background to it too is going to make the movie that much more rewarding. is because it's like, I mean, who know? You don't really get the inside track on things like that. So, I appreciate you sharing that with me, and it's fantastic.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I can tell you stories all day. It was, I mean, listen, I keep saying to people, I'm like, if I never do another film, which I mean, I really hope I do, and I hope this film opens up more of those opportunities for me. But if I never do another film again, I will always just be so grateful for this experience on this film, because every single person that I met was just kind and gracious and awesome, and like, from the very beginning. I mean, like the director fought for me to be in this movie. They did not want me for this. They wanted a name, which I totally get. I mean, come on, but he saw my audition tape and he said, no, I want her, and just from that very beginning, I just felt like I felt very loved and welcomed, and like, they want me here, I'm like, yeah, it's a big deal, and yes, it's Teacher's Elbow, but like, yes, I'm supposed to be here because they want me here, so if I never do anything again, I'll always be grateful just for that. And yeah, all the stories, because it was a wild and crazy set, man. It was fun. It was really fun.
And all of those words you've described about everybody in the movie describe you. Just talking to you for this time, you have been absolutely amazing and fantastic. Usually these interviews go 20, 30 minutes on average.
Oh, like this poor
and
man. I've kept him on for
No. You did not keep me on. I loved this conversation, and it's generally because we don't get into a conversation.
I know.
And I love that. I want, you have a formal invite anytime you want to be on one of my shows. Please go on.
Thank you.
I would love to have you on the Scene Snobs podcast, because that's my live Tuesday night show, and I bring on guest co-hosts just to talk about what's going on in the industry, things like that.
Yeah.
So
I would love to. I would love to. By now I can talk, so
I will absolutely reach out to you, and I would love to have you on, because it would be so much fun, because this conversation was so great. And I wish you nothing but the best and the luck. And when this movie comes out, I know it's going to shine. I can't wait. I'm sorry that we're in the apocalypse right now, but so it's hard to
It's my fault. It's because when we were shooting this, someone was like, Liz, aren't you so excited your parents are going to be able to walk into a theater and see your face? And I said out loud, well, knowing my luck, I'll probably end up on Netflix or something. And here we are.
You know what? Everyone's watching Netflix right now.
That's what I said. I said, everyone's got Netflix. Everyone's watching Netflix. Couldn't be better. But no, this is like before the pandemic was even a thing. I was like, God, what did I do, you guys? Everyone's got Netflix. Everyone's home. Nobody has anything better to do. So everyone should watch this movie when it comes out.
100%. And I'm going to make sure that I'm screaming from the rafters on my social media to go check it out. I cannot wait. It sounds amazing. You are fantastic. Thank you for coming on the show today and talking with me.
My pleasure.
Open invitation.
Thank you. Oh, I'm going to take you up on that. Thank you.
Do the podcast. Please do the podcast. I'm
going to call this girl up like in a few minutes and be like, okay, so let's sit down and record a few episodes, because we've already got it. So let's just do this. Let's do this.
And don't worry about intro music or sound or anything like that. Just do it. When I started this, I had nothing but a microphone and a computer.
Yeah.
I didn't even have a camera. It didn't work on my laptop. And now we do live shows. Yeah. But I just had to edit, pictures to the audio. If you go back and look at my first podcast on the Scene Snobs, it's actually just a friend of mine and I talking. And I edited Night of the Living Dead to it because it was the same amount of time. So you're just listening to us talking and watching Night of the Living Dead because it's public domain. It's free, so you can put it up. And
that's awesome.
So I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. It doesn't matter. I'm going to do it. I'm going to have fun with it. And that's what it's going to be. So
you're inspiring me. All right.
Please do it.
I want to do it. I really do. I really do. All right. I'm gonna.
And send it to me. Send me links, whatever. If you need any advice on setting it up, I'm happy to do that.
I will, because I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, please do. I would love it.
I
I definitely can't wait, and I will put it out on the Scene Snobs social media so we can build it up.
Thank you. That's
Absolutely. Liz, you've been fantastic. Thank you for coming on the show today. I cannot wait to have you back on and talk to you again. But is there anything else that social media or anything that you want to promote right now coming up? Or
I mean, we're slow in the industry right now, so
Yeah.
I'm not really. I'm writing. That's basically what I'm doing.
Nice.
But you can always find me on Facebook under Liz Priestley. That's my only social media. I'm very boring. So, but yeah, that's where I'm at. So follow me there.
Perfect. And everybody, look out for Concrete Cowboys. I cannot wait for it. It's going to be on Netflix at some point. They will let us know. And I will make sure. Yes, you will let me know, and I will make sure that everybody else knows, on my very limited grasp of reach of people. But, I'll get there. I promise. I'll do the best I can. But thank you so much again for coming on the show. You've been fantastic. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Of course, I am Mick Manhattan, the Scene Snob. And you can always follow us at the Scene Snob anywhere for updates on all of our shows. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Liz, thank you so much.